"I am not fit for any man," the curvy woman said, "but I can love your children." The cowboy fell silent. Clara had always felt like she walked through life in the background, unnoticed by most people and overlooked by those who mattered. She was a woman of generous curves, with soft, warm eyes and a smile that could light up a room, yet she often believed that her appearance made her unworthy of attention from men. For years she had struggled with her self-image, comparing herself to the women she saw in magazines, on television, or even just walking down the street. She could never measure up in her own mind. Her family had always loved her, of course, and her friends valued her kindness, but Clara could not shake the feeling that no man would ever truly desire her for herself. Despite her insecurities, Clara had a gift, a natural, effortless ability to connect with children. Whenever she spent time around them, she felt at ease, as if their laughter and innocence reminded her of the world she wanted to belong to. She had volunteered at the local daycare since she was a teenager and often helped care for her nieces and nephews. The children loved her instantly, flocking to her whenever she came around, drawn to her warmth and gentle humor. Clara, in turn, felt a deep sense of satisfaction from seeing their happiness. It gave her life purpose, even if she sometimes wished she could find a place in someone's heart beyond the role of caregiver or friend. Life in her small rural town was quiet, almost predictable. People knew each other, and news traveled quickly through word of mouth. Clara liked the simplicity, the rhythm of daily life, and the comfort of familiarity. Yet she also longed for something more, a connection with someone who could see her for who she truly was, someone who could appreciate her heart rather than just her appearance. She often dreamed of what it would be like to be wanted, to have someone trust her completely, yet her insecurities always held her back. Then came the annual town fair, a celebration that brought together the community for a weekend of laughter, games, food, and music. It was the kind of event where neighbors greeted each other warmly. Children ran around with sticky hands and wide eyes, and the scent of fresh pies and roasted corn filled the air. Clara had gone mostly out of habit, enjoying the energy of the crowd and the chance to interact with the children who were always so full of excitement. She had never expected anything extraordinary to happen. Luke, the local cowboy, was there too. He was a man of quiet strength, the kind who spoke little but whose presence commanded respect. Luke had been raising his two young children alone since their mother had passed years ago. Life on the ranch was demanding, leaving him little time for socializing or romance. His children were his world, and he approached fatherhood with a steadfast dedication that often left him exhausted but fulfilled. He didn't expect to meet anyone new at the fair, especially someone who might fit into the complicated puzzle of his life. Their paths crossed unexpectedly near a game booth where children were trying to win stuffed animals by tossing rings onto bottles. Clara was kneeling on the ground, helping a small girl aim, her laughter mingling with the girl's as she encouraged her. Luke, observing from a distance, noticed her immediately. There was something about her, the way her eyes sparkled with genuine joy, the way she moved naturally, at ease in her environment, that caught his attention. He watched quietly, unsure why he felt drawn to this stranger who seemed so effortlessly kind. Clara noticed him too, although she did not realize the effect she had on him. There was something about the way he watched her, a mix of curiosity and something softer, almost like a silent recognition. She felt a flutter of nerves, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She reminded herself not to read too much into it. He was just a man at the fair, after all, but she could not deny a small spark of intrigue. The moment came when Luke's son ran toward Clara, laughing, and stumbled slightly. Clara caught him easily, steadying him with a gentle hand and a reassuring smile. Luke's eyes softened, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself a small, private hope. Here was someone who could handle the chaos of his life with patience and warmth, someone who could make his children feel safe and happy. But he remained silent, hesitant to speak, unsure if he should risk introducing himself or if it was better to simply observe. Clara, unaware of the thoughts running through Luke's mind, continued to interact with the children. She laughed freely, teasing lightly, and celebrated their small victories with genuine enthusiasm. It was a performance not for show, but for the simple pleasure of being part of their world. In those moments, she forgot about her insecurities, her doubts, and the voices in her head telling her she was not good enough. She felt alive, appreciated, and useful, even if only in a small corner of the world. Eventually, Luke found the courage to approach her, cautiously and respectfully. "You seem good with kids," he said simply, his voice low and steady. Clara looked up, startled at first, and then smiled politely. "Thank you. I really enjoy being around them," she replied softly. There was no pretense in her words, no attempt to impress him, just honesty. Luke nodded, unsure how to continue. He wasn't used to speaking with women outside of casual greetings, and certainly not someone who seemed so effortlessly kind and genuine. "I have too. They can be a handful," he admitted, a hint of humor in his voice despite the underlying seriousness. Clara laughed lightly, the sound warm and inviting. "I love a challenge," she said, glancing at the children playing nearby. "They're just little humans learning about the world. I don't mind helping." There was a pause, a quiet moment in which neither spoke, yet both felt a subtle shift. Clara felt a mixture of curiosity and caution. She was drawn to his calm, steady demeanor, yet part of her feared that getting close could lead to disappointment. Luke felt a connection he hadn't anticipated, a recognition of shared values and potential trust, yet he remained guarded, unsure how to open his life to someone new. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of activity, rides, games, and the smell of sweet treats, but the brief connection between them lingered. They exchanged polite smiles, occasional nods, and quiet glances, each noticing the other more than they cared to admit. Clara returned home that evening with a tired body, but a heart that felt unexpectedly lighter. She replayed the encounter in her mind, questioning her feelings and wondering if perhaps she had overreacted to a simple conversation. Luke, too, returned to his ranch, carrying with him a small but persistent thought of Clara. He couldn't explain why, but something about her stayed with him. The way she laughed, the way she interacted with the children, the subtle kindness in her eyes. It was unsettling in a way he was not accustomed to. He had spent years focused solely on his children and the demands of ranch life, leaving little room for anything else. Yet here was a woman who seemed to fit into the edges of his life without trying, and for the first time, he allowed himself to wonder what it would be like to have her near. By the end of the day, neither Clara nor Luke spoke to each other again, but both carried an unspoken acknowledgement of the encounter. Clara, despite her insecurities, felt a small flicker of hope that perhaps someone could see beyond appearances, that someone might value her for her heart rather than her body. Luke, despite his usual caution, felt a tentative curiosity, a question forming in his mind about whether Clara could become part of their lives in a meaningful way. In the days that followed, Clara found herself thinking about the cowboy and his children more often than she expected. She recalled the way he watched her, the quiet strength in his voice, and the obvious love he had for his kids. A small part of her wondered if there could be a place for her in that life, even though doubt quickly returned, reminding her of all the reasons she felt unworthy. Meanwhile, Luke observed Clara from afar during the occasional community events. He noticed her kindness not only toward his children but toward others as well. The elderly neighbor who needed groceries, the stray animals she fed, the children she encouraged at the park. He began to recognize that her heart was extraordinary, the kind of heart that could care deeply and love unconditionally. Yet he remained silent, unsure how to bridge the gap between his solitary life and the warmth, Clara seemed to offer so effortlessly. The story of their first meeting, simple and unremarkable to an outsider, set the stage for something deeper. It was not a dramatic or sudden event, but a gentle, almost imperceptible beginning, where two people who had been carefully protecting themselves from disappointment found themselves quietly drawn to each other. The seeds of connection were sown that day, not through grand gestures or overt declarations, but through small moments of honesty, kindness, and shared understanding. As the sun set over the town, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Clara sat by her window, reflecting on the afternoon. She still battled her insecurities, still wondered about her worth, but she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: the possibility of being seen, truly seen, by someone who mattered. Luke, on the other hand, looked out over his ranch, thinking about the curvy woman with a gentle laugh and an undeniable way with his children. He did not yet know what would come next, but for the first time in years, he allowed himself a quiet hope that life could be different, that perhaps, somehow, the two of them might find a way to fit together in the most unexpected yet meaningful way. And so their story began, not with fireworks or declarations of love, but with a glance, a laugh, and the subtle understanding that sometimes the smallest encounters can plant the largest seeds. The fair was over, the crowd had dispersed, and life returned to its usual rhythm. But for Clara and Luke, the day lingered, quietly shaping the beginnings of a bond that neither of them fully understood yet, but both would come to cherish in the days and months to come. After their first meeting at the fair, Clara found herself thinking about Luke more than she expected. She tried to focus on her usual routines, helping at the daycare, visiting her nieces and nephews, and tending to small tasks around her home. But her mind kept drifting back to the cowboy and the two little children who had stolen her heart in an instant. She remembered the way Luke had stood quietly, watching her interact with the children, his expression calm yet thoughtful. There was something in his silence that intrigued her, something unspoken that invited curiosity but did not demand attention. Despite this curiosity, Clara's insecurities quickly returned. She often told herself that she was not fit for any man, as if saying it aloud would somehow prevent disappointment. She doubted that Luke could ever see past her size or her perceived flaws, even if he had smiled warmly at her that day. Clara had grown accustomed to keeping her heart at a distance. She had learned over the years that people often judged too quickly, and she had been hurt more times than she cared to count. So she decided to proceed carefully, telling herself that admiring from afar was safer than risking a direct connection. Meanwhile, Luke was dealing with his own thoughts. Life on the ranch was demanding, and raising two children alone left him with little time for himself. Every day was a balancing act between chores, cattle, and school runs. Yet in quiet moments, he found his mind wandering back to Clara. He admired the ease with which she cared for his children, her laughter, and the natural warmth she exuded. Luke had learned over the years to protect his heart, to remain cautious when it came to relationships. But Clara was different. She seemed genuine in a way that was rare, unpretentious, kind, and patient. For the first time in a long while, he wondered if there could be someone he could trust to become a part of their lives. It was during a weekday afternoon, when the children were home from school and Luke was managing chores in the barn, that Clara first offered to help more regularly. She approached Luke cautiously, aware of his quiet, reserved nature. "I enjoy spending time with your children," she said softly, a little nervously. "If you ever need a hand, I'd be happy to help." Luke looked up from the hay he was stacking, surprised by her sincerity. He had not expected Clara to make such a direct offer. For a moment, he was silent, considering how much he trusted her, how much he needed the support, and how careful he had to be when letting anyone new into his family's life. His instinct was to protect his children, to shield them from potential disappointment or heartbreak. Yet as he glanced at Clara, he saw the warmth in her eyes and the steadiness of her expression. He recognized that her offer was genuine and that she cared deeply, not just for the children but for them as a family. With a slight nod, Luke accepted her offer. "I could use some help," he said finally, keeping his tone neutral. He didn't say more, unsure how much to reveal, but his quiet acknowledgement was enough for Clara. She smiled, trying not to let her excitement show too obviously. She knew that Luke's life was complicated, that his world revolved around responsibilities far beyond her own experiences, yet she felt a small surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a place for her here. The first few visits were tentative. Clara spent time with the children in their home, helping with homework, preparing simple meals, and reading stories aloud. She was careful not to overstep any boundaries, understanding that trust could not be rushed. The children, however, were quick to accept her. They laughed at her jokes, sat close during story time, and sought her out whenever possible. Clara found herself smiling more than she had in years. In the presence of these children, she felt needed and appreciated, and that appreciation began to chip away at the layers of doubt she had built around herself. Luke observed quietly from a distance at first, his usual reserved demeanor masking the emotions he felt. He noticed how naturally Clara engaged with his children, how they seemed to respond to her in ways he had rarely seen. He saw their laughter, the ease in their movements, and the genuine comfort they displayed around her. Slowly, he began to let his guard down, realizing that Clara's presence brought not only joy to his children but a sense of calm and stability to their home. As the days passed, Clara and Luke began to spend more time together, though the conversations were cautious and measured. Clara learned about the demands of ranch life, the challenges Luke faced as a single father, and the routines that governed their days. Luke, in turn, learned about Clara's life, her passions, her quiet struggles, and her love for children. They discovered shared values, honesty, patience, and a dedication to caring for those they loved. These small moments of connection laid the groundwork for trust, each interaction strengthening the bond that was slowly forming. Despite these growing connections, Clara could not fully ignore her insecurities. There were nights when she lay awake, wondering if she was truly worthy of being part of Luke's life. She questioned whether he might see her kindness as a convenience rather than genuine affection, whether the children's attachment to her would fade, and whether her heart would be hurt if things did not progress as she hoped. These thoughts often left her feeling anxious, yet she continued to show up, drawn by the simple joy of being needed and appreciated. Luke, too, faced internal challenges. He was unaccustomed to sharing his life so openly, unaccustomed to allowing someone new into the delicate balance of his household. He worried about potential misunderstandings, about exposing his children to someone who might leave, and about navigating the emotional complexities that came with trusting another adult. Yet, as he watched Clara, he felt a quiet reassurance. Her presence was consistent, her care genuine, and her love for his children unmistakable. Slowly, he realized that letting her into their lives did not weaken him. It strengthened the family in ways he had not anticipated. One afternoon, a small but significant moment occurred. Clara was helping Luke's youngest, a shy little boy named Ben, with reading. Ben struggled with pronunciation, his frustration growing with every misread word. Clara knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "It's okay, Ben," she said softly. "Everyone learns at their own pace. Let's try this together." Luke, standing nearby, watched silently. He saw the patience in Clara's eyes, the encouragement in her voice, and the unwavering belief in his child's abilities. At that moment, he understood something important. Clara was not just kind. She was reliable, trustworthy, and truly cared about their family. Clara, unaware of the significance of Luke's observation, continued her work. She focused on the children, celebrating their small victories and offering comfort during setbacks. She laughed with them, shared stories, and provided a sense of stability that had been missing in their home. For her, these moments were more than just acts of kindness. They were affirmations of her own worth. She began to realize that she could contribute meaningfully to someone else's life, that she could be loved and appreciated for who she was, not just for how she looked. Over time, a quiet rhythm developed between Clara and Luke. Mornings were often spent helping the children with school preparations, while afternoons included chores on the ranch or quiet moments in the living room. Evenings sometimes found them sharing simple meals, talking about the day, or reading stories together. The household grew more harmonious, not because everything was perfect, but because Clara's presence brought warmth, patience, and understanding into their lives. Through these interactions, both Clara and Luke began to change in subtle but important ways. Clara's confidence grew, not dramatically, but enough to allow her to recognize her own value. She began to smile more easily, to laugh without self-consciousness, and to accept compliments graciously. Luke, in turn, learned to appreciate the support, the companionship, and the quiet strength Clara brought into their lives. He began to see that love could take many forms, not just romantic gestures or declarations, but steady presence, shared responsibility, and genuine care for one another. Despite their growing connection, there was still an unspoken tension. Clara had not yet revealed the depth of her feelings, and Luke had not yet expressed his own. Both were cautious, aware of the complexities of emotions and the potential for hurt. Yet there was an unspoken understanding, a recognition that something meaningful was developing, even if neither could define it fully. As weeks turned into months, Clara's role in the household became more defined. She was no longer just a helper. She had become a trusted part of their lives. The children depended on her, looked up to her, and loved her in a way that was pure and uncomplicated. Luke, while still reserved, began to appreciate the quiet stability she brought, the way she enriched their daily routines, and the calm reassurance she provided in moments of stress or difficulty. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned soft shades of pink and gold, Clara and Luke sat together on the porch, watching the children play in the yard. There was no need for words. The quiet companionship spoke volumes. Clara felt a sense of belonging she had not experienced before, and Luke felt a growing trust, a recognition that Clara was not just passing through their lives but becoming an integral part of them. The bond between Clara and Luke was no longer tentative. It was rooted in shared experiences, mutual respect, and genuine care. Though they had not declared love, they had discovered something just as important, a deep connection built on trust, understanding, and the joy of being there for each other, and for the children they both cherished. And so, life continued, quietly and steadily. Clara and Luke navigated the challenges and rewards of daily life, learning more about each other and themselves. Clara's self-doubt remained at times, but it was softened by the warmth and acceptance she found in this small family. Luke's caution remained, but it was eased by the consistency and kindness Clara brought to their lives. Together, they began to realize that family could be built in many forms, and that love could grow slowly, steadily, and quietly without fanfare, but with profound impact. As the days turned into weeks, Clara and Luke's relationship with each other and with the children grew deeper. It was no longer just a casual connection or a temporary helping hand. Clara had become a part of their daily lives. She was there when the children needed encouragement, when schoolwork became frustrating, and even during quiet moments when the house felt heavy with the routine of ranch life. She had found a place where she was needed, and in that, she discovered a new kind of joy that went beyond her previous experiences. Clara loved seeing the children thrive under her guidance. Ben, the younger boy, had begun to read more confidently, his small victories celebrated with laughter and hugs. His older sister, Lily, had become more outgoing and willing to share her thoughts with the world, something Clara encouraged gently, praising her when she took small steps toward confidence. Clara found herself fully invested in their well-being, not out of obligation, but because she genuinely cared for them. Every smile she drew from their faces, every small achievement she helped foster, strengthened her sense of purpose and her belief in herself. Luke watched silently at first, observing the interactions with a mixture of admiration and caution. He had never expected anyone to connect with his children so naturally, and he found himself learning from Clara's patience and understanding. Luke had always been protective, sometimes overly so, but he began to realize that letting someone in did not mean losing control. Clara's presence did not disrupt their lives, it enhanced them. She offered stability, laughter, and guidance in ways he could not always provide while managing the ranch and his responsibilities. One afternoon, as the sun poured through the windows, Clara sat with Lily at the kitchen table, helping her with a school project. Luke was nearby, repairing a fence outside, but he paused to watch the scene for a moment. Clara was animated and patient, listening intently to Lily's ideas, asking questions, and guiding her gently without taking over. Luke felt a sense of calm he had not experienced in a long time. It was more than relief, it was gratitude. He realized that Clara's love for his children was real, consistent, and unconditional, and it touched something in him that he had long kept closed. Despite the growing bond, Clara still struggled with her self-doubt. Even as she felt accepted and appreciated, she worried about whether she truly belonged in Luke's life or whether her presence was temporary. She often wondered if her size, her insecurities, or her past would one day make her unworthy in Luke's eyes. Some nights, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, questioning whether she could ever be more than a friend or helper to this man and his children. She longed to be loved, yet fear held her back, reminding her of past rejections and disappointments. Luke, on the other hand, was beginning to acknowledge his own feelings, though he had not yet admitted them fully, even to himself. He appreciated Clara's presence, her care, and her unwavering support for the children. But deeper than that, he felt a quiet connection, a sense that Clara could belong in their lives in a more permanent, meaningful way. He hesitated, though, because he did not want to rush anything. Luke had learned through life and experience that relationships required time, trust, and understanding. He could feel that something significant was developing between them, but he was determined to let it grow naturally. One weekend, Luke decided to take the children and Clara on a small outing to a nearby river. He wanted them to spend the day outside, enjoying nature, and to strengthen the bond between Clara and the children further. Clara was delighted, helping pack sandwiches, snacks, and games for the trip. The children were ecstatic, running around and laughing in anticipation. As they arrived at the river, Clara took a moment to observe Luke. He was relaxed yet attentive, guiding the children safely along the rocks and shallow water. There was a softness in his expression as he watched Clara interact with them, a silent acknowledgement that she had become essential to their happiness. Throughout the day, Clara engaged the children in small games and creative activities. She taught them how to skip stones across the water, helped them identify different birds, and encouraged them to take small risks, like climbing onto a large rock to admire the view. Luke watched from a distance, occasionally smiling to himself at the ease with which Clara guided the children, her laughter blending with theirs. He noticed how naturally she assumed responsibility without being overbearing, how she balanced discipline and encouragement, and how she genuinely seemed to care for their happiness. As the day wore on, Clara and Luke shared a quiet moment by the riverbank while the children played nearby. There was no need for words. The silence between them was comfortable, even intimate. Luke felt a growing admiration for Clara, realizing that her care for his children reflected the depth of her character. He began to see that love was not always dramatic or immediate. It could be steady, patient, and shown through actions rather than words. Clara, in turn, felt a sense of trust growing within her. She was beginning to believe that she could be valued, not just for what she did, but for who she was. Despite the closeness that was developing, challenges began to surface. Clara sometimes felt overlooked or uncertain about her place in the household, especially when Luke's responsibilities consumed most of his attention. She worried that she might be taken for granted, or that her contributions would not be fully appreciated. These moments of doubt reminded her that emotional bonds required not only trust, but also reassurance. She began to voice her feelings gently, sharing her thoughts with Luke in quiet, honest conversations that strengthened their connection. Luke, too, faced moments of uncertainty. While he recognized Clara's value, he struggled with expressing his feelings openly. He had been through difficult experiences in the past and knew the importance of protecting his heart and the children's emotions. Yet, as he observed Clara's commitment, her patience, and her love, he realized that his fears were slowly diminishing. He began to understand that letting someone care for the children and become a part of their lives was not a weakness, it was a strength. One afternoon, a small crisis brought the household together in an unexpected way. Ben had fallen off his bicycle while playing near the edge of the yard. Clara rushed to his side, comforting him with gentle words and careful attention, while Luke tended to the scrape on his knee. The children were shaken, but Clara's calm presence reassured them. She cleaned the wound, applied a bandage, and sat with Ben until he felt safe again. Luke observed this, his heart swelling with gratitude and admiration. In that moment, he understood that Clara's love for the children was unwavering, and her care extended beyond simple acts. She was fully committed to their well-being. As the days passed, Clara began to confront her insecurities more openly. She realized that her value was not determined by her appearance or by societal standards, but by her actions, her kindness, and the love she gave freely. She found confidence in the way the children responded to her, in the trust Luke placed in her, and in the quiet satisfaction that came from knowing she was making a positive difference in their lives. Slowly, she began to see herself through a different lens, one that recognized her worth and the unique contributions she brought to the family. Luke noticed the change in Clara as well. He saw her growing confidence, her willingness to take initiative, and the joy she found in caring for the children. He began to speak to her more openly, asking for her opinions, sharing small details about his life, and inviting her to participate in decisions regarding the household and the children's activities. Their conversations became more frequent, more personal, and more meaningful. A sense of partnership was forming, rooted in mutual respect, trust, and shared responsibility. During this time, Luke's admiration for Clara deepened. He appreciated her patience, her understanding, and the consistency she brought to their lives. He began to recognize that love could be shown in many ways, not only through romantic gestures, but also through actions, care, and unwavering support. Clara's presence had brought stability and warmth to their household, and Luke realized that he was beginning to rely on her in ways he had never anticipated. The children thrived under this growing bond. Lily and Ben felt secure, loved, and encouraged, and they began to look to Clara as a source of guidance and support. Their laughter, curiosity, and confidence reflected the positive influence Clara had on their lives. Luke observed these changes with quiet satisfaction, understanding that Clara had become more than a friend. She had become an integral part of their family, someone they could rely on in every way. One evening, after the children were tucked into bed, Clara and Luke shared a quiet moment on the porch, watching the sunset over the ranch. The sky was painted in soft hues of orange and pink, and the air was filled with the gentle sounds of nature. There was no need for words. The silence between them was comfortable, even intimate. Clara felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before, and Luke felt a growing trust, a recognition that Clara was not just passing through their lives but becoming an essential part of them. It was in these quiet, unassuming moments that their bond strengthened the most. They began to understand each other's thoughts, feelings, and values without needing to speak them aloud. The trust between them was deepening, creating a foundation that could support the challenges and joys that lay ahead. Clara's self-doubt had not disappeared entirely, but it was softened by the consistent care and acceptance she experienced within this small, unconventional family. Luke's caution had not vanished, but it was balanced by the recognition that love could grow slowly, steadily, and quietly, without forcing declarations or expectations. By the end of this chapter in their lives, Clara and Luke had established a rhythm of trust, support, and companionship. Their connection was no longer tentative. It was real, meaningful, and deeply felt. Both had learned important lessons. Clara about her own worth and the power of genuine care, Luke about the value of letting someone into their lives and the strength found in partnership. Together, they were discovering that family could be built in many forms, and that love could manifest in patience, kindness, and shared responsibility rather than just romance. Life on the ranch continued its quiet rhythm, but Clara and Luke soon realized that even the strongest bonds could be tested. Their connection had grown deeper, built on trust, care, and shared responsibilities, yet life had a way of presenting obstacles when least expected. It was not dramatic or overwhelming, but subtle, small challenges that made both Clara and Luke reflect on who they were, what they wanted, and how much they trusted each other. One morning, as the sun rose over the wide fields, Clara arrived at Luke's home to help with breakfast and prepare the children for school. She had become part of the household routine, comfortable with the tasks and the presence of the children, yet she couldn't ignore the nervous flutter in her chest whenever she looked at Luke. She wanted to be appreciated, to be seen not just as a helper but as someone meaningful in their lives. At the same time, a part of her worried that she might never fully belong, that her self-doubt might push Luke away even as she tried to care for his family. Luke, meanwhile, had begun to notice changes in himself. He found himself thinking about Clara during moments of quiet, wondering if she might stay, if she might belong not just to his children's lives but to his as well. He recognized that he cared deeply for her, though he had not yet found the courage to express it openly. He worried, as he often did, about getting too close too soon, about disrupting the delicate balance of their lives, and about risking his children's happiness. Luke's past experiences had taught him caution, but he also realized that avoiding connection entirely left a quiet emptiness in his life. Tensions first appeared during an ordinary day when small misunderstandings surfaced. Clara had spent the morning helping Lily with a school project, encouraging her to try something new. In doing so, she gave gentle advice that Luke misinterpreted as criticism. He paused, frowning slightly, unsure if she had overstepped. Clara noticed his hesitation and felt a small pang of worry. She had no intention of criticizing him or his parenting. Her advice had always been meant as support, not judgment. Yet, in that moment, she realized that communication was more complicated than she had expected. The children noticed the subtle tension as well. Ben, sensitive and intuitive, asked if something was wrong. Clara smiled reassuringly, but Luke's silence left a quiet unease in the room. Clara felt a wave of guilt, even though she knew her intentions had been pure. She understood that trust required patience, and that building it with someone who had been cautious for years was a delicate process. She decided to approach the situation with care, focusing on open conversation rather than letting small misunderstandings fester. That evening, after the children were asleep, Clara gently brought up the issue with Luke. "I hope I didn't upset you today," she said softly. "I only wanted to help with Lily's project. I didn't mean to criticize you or interfere." Luke looked at her, surprised by her thoughtfulness. He realized that her concern was genuine, that she valued his feelings, and that she was willing to approach the problem calmly rather than letting it escalate. Luke nodded slowly, his expression softening. "I know," he said quietly. "It's just, sometimes I worry about my parenting. I want to get everything right for the kids." "I didn't mean to react the way I did." Clara reached out and placed her hand on his, a small gesture of reassurance. In that moment, both of them understood something important. Trust and connection were not just built in moments of harmony, but also in how challenges were handled together. The next few weeks were filled with small adjustments. Clara continued to care for the children and help with household tasks, but she also made an effort to communicate more clearly with Luke, ensuring that her intentions were understood. Luke, in turn, worked on expressing his thoughts and feelings more openly, recognizing that silence could create misunderstandings. Together, they navigated the delicate balance of blending their lives, learning that patience, empathy, and honesty were essential ingredients in building a strong, lasting bond. Life outside the home also brought challenges. Some townspeople, unaware of Clara's deep connection with Luke and the children, made subtle remarks or assumptions about her role in their lives. A few comments about her appearance or suitability for a relationship reached her ears, and though they were not meant to be cruel, they sparked doubt in her mind. Clara wrestled with the familiar feelings of inadequacy, questioning whether she truly belonged or if her presence would ever be fully accepted. Luke noticed her hesitation and frustration and took it upon himself to offer reassurance. "Clara," he said one evening as they watched the children play in the yard, "don't listen to what others think. You've been nothing but kind, patient, and caring. The kids love you and I trust you completely. That's what matters." Clara felt warmth spread through her chest at his words, a feeling she had longed for but rarely experienced. His acknowledgement helped her quiet the voices of doubt and reinforced her sense of belonging. Amid these challenges, small moments of joy reminded them why they had grown so close. Clara discovered that her influence on the children went beyond simple care. She was helping them build confidence, teaching them empathy, and showing them how to approach life with kindness. Luke saw Clara's impact firsthand in their laughter, their curiosity, and their willingness to share both their successes and frustrations. He realized that her presence was more than helpful, it was transformative, enriching their lives in ways he had not anticipated. One weekend, a local festival provided another opportunity for connection. Clara, Luke, and the children spent the day enjoying games, rides, and local food. It was a moment of lightheartedness amid the routine challenges of daily life. Clara's laughter blended seamlessly with the children's, and Luke observed her with quiet admiration. Her ability to engage fully with the children, to offer guidance without controlling, and to celebrate small joys with sincerity made him realize just how much he valued her presence. Even in moments of laughter, however, both Clara and Luke learned that challenges could arise unexpectedly. A minor argument between the children over a game led to tension, which Clara handled with patience and understanding. Luke watched as she guided them calmly, mediating without taking sides, and he recognized the depth of her nurturing abilities. This day, like so many others, reminded him that love and care were demonstrated not only in easy moments, but also in the ways challenges were met and resolved. Over time, Clara began to feel more confident in her role within the household. She realized that her worth was not defined by what others thought of her, or by societal expectations of beauty and desirability, but by the love, patience, and understanding she brought to those around her. She started to embrace herself fully, acknowledging that she had something unique to offer. A heart capable of deep, genuine care for children and for the family she was becoming part of. Luke, in turn, began to recognize that his protective instincts could coexist with trust and openness. He saw that allowing Clara into their lives strengthened the family rather than threatening it. He learned that relationships were not solely about control or perfection, but about partnership, support, and shared responsibility. Through each small challenge, he gained a deeper appreciation for Clara's qualities and the stability she brought into their world. As weeks turned into months, the household found a rhythm that balanced challenges with joy. Clara and Luke's bond continued to deepen, strengthened by shared experiences and the way they navigated misunderstandings and doubts together. They celebrated victories, comforted each other during setbacks, and found reassurance in the quiet moments of companionship. The children flourished under this environment, feeling secure, loved, and valued, and both Clara and Luke recognized the importance of the foundation they were building together. One evening, after the children were asleep, Clara and Luke sat on the porch watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The air was cool, and the quiet of the night felt peaceful and reassuring. Clara turned to Luke, her voice soft but confident. "I know I have doubts sometimes," she admitted, "but being here with you and the kids makes me feel like I belong. I've never felt this way before." Luke reached out, taking her hand in his gaze steady and warm. "Clara, you do belong," he said simply. "You've been a part of our lives for months now. I see what you bring to this family, and I can't imagine it without you." That night, Clara lay in bed reflecting on the day. She thought about the challenges they had faced, the small misunderstandings, the doubts, and the external opinions, and realized that every difficulty had strengthened her connection with Luke and the children. She understood that love and trust were not simple or easy, but that they were built through patience, care, and a willingness to confront fears and insecurities. For the first time, she felt confident in her place in their lives, knowing that her presence was valued and appreciated. Luke, too, reflected on the progress they had made. He recognized that the challenges they faced had not weakened their bond, but had made it stronger. He admired Clara's resilience, her patience, and her unwavering care for the children. He realized that their connection was more than convenience or temporary companionship. It was a deep, meaningful relationship rooted in trust, respect, and genuine affection. As the days continued, Clara and Luke continued to navigate life together, facing small challenges with patience and understanding while celebrating the joys of family and companionship. They had learned that trust and love were not instantaneous, but required time, effort, and the willingness to be vulnerable. Each challenge they overcame together reinforced their bond and strengthened the foundation of the family they were building, quietly but surely. Through every obstacle, both Clara and Luke discovered important truths, not only about each other but about themselves. Clara learned to trust in her worth, her ability to love, and her role as a cherished part of their lives. Luke learned to open his heart, to rely on someone else, and to appreciate the quiet strength that Clara brought into their household. Together, they were not just surviving the challenges of life. They were learning to thrive, creating a family built on trust, care, and love in all its forms. Time moved quietly on the ranch, as it always had, yet for Clara and Luke, life had changed in ways neither could have anticipated. Their bond, once tentative and careful, had grown into a steady, meaningful connection that shaped the daily rhythm of their household. Clara was no longer just a helper or a visitor. She was a trusted part of their lives, someone the children relied on, someone Luke trusted without question. And though the relationship between her and Luke had not yet been spoken of in grand declarations, it had developed into something deeper than either had imagined. Mutual respect, trust, and love expressed through everyday actions and care. The children, Lily and Ben, had flourished under this environment of warmth and stability. Clara's patience, kindness, and encouragement had nurtured them in ways that made Luke's heart swell with quiet gratitude. They laughed more freely, expressed themselves with confidence, and approached each day with curiosity and joy. Luke noticed these changes, and in those moments, he realized how deeply Clara had become a part of their lives. Her presence was no longer just appreciated, it was indispensable. One morning, Clara awoke to the sound of birds singing outside her window. She stretched and smiled, thinking about the life she had found here, the little home where she had quietly carved a place for herself. Her self-doubt, once so overwhelming, had begun to fade. She still struggled at times with the familiar voice that told her she was not fit for any man. But now there was another voice, quieter yet stronger, reminding her that she was valued, needed, and loved, not just by the children but by Luke as well. Luke, meanwhile, was tending to the ranch chores, feeling the weight of responsibility as he always did, but this time with a sense of shared purpose. He no longer felt the quiet emptiness that had followed him for years. Clara's presence had brought a calm, a balance, and a joy he had not realized he had been missing. Watching her interact with the children, he often caught himself smiling, feeling a quiet pride in what they had built together. It was a life that was far from perfect, full of the usual challenges of work, school, and everyday responsibilities, but it was real and it was theirs. One afternoon, Luke returned from the barn to find Clara in the kitchen, helping the children prepare a snack. Lily was carefully arranging fruit on a plate while Ben attempted to pour juice without spilling. Clara guided them gently, laughing with them when mistakes were made and celebrating their small successes. Luke leaned against the doorframe, watching the scene unfold. The sight of Clara, fully in her element, surrounded by the children's laughter and joy, filled him with a deep, quiet certainty. He knew then that she had become an essential part of their lives, someone he could not imagine being without. After the children had finished their snack and gone outside to play, Luke approached Clara. He hesitated for a moment, searching for the right words. Clara looked up, meeting his gaze, sensing that something significant was about to be said. Luke took a deep breath and spoke slowly, carefully. "Clara, I want you to know how much you mean to all of us. You've been here for the kids in ways I never thought possible, and I don't want this life without you in it." Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had longed to hear words like these, yet she had not expected them to come so quietly, without grand declarations, but with deep sincerity. Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of relief and joy. "Luke," she whispered, "I never thought I could belong somewhere like this. I've always felt like I wasn't good enough, but being here, with you and the children, it feels right. I want to be part of this family." Luke smiled, a small, genuine smile that mirrored her own emotions. In that moment, there was no need for grand gestures or declarations of love. Their connection had been proven through months of shared experiences, patience, and trust, and now it was openly acknowledged, quietly but fully. The children, sensing the emotional shift in the adults, came running back inside. Ben tugged on Clara's hand, asking her to play a game, while Lily chattered excitedly about a story she had just imagined. Clara laughed and joined them, her heart light. Luke watched them, feeling a profound sense of contentment. He realized that love could be simple, patient, and expressed through the daily acts of care, support, and togetherness. He understood that the family they had become was strong, not because of perfection or grand romantic gestures, but because of the steady, genuine connection they shared. Over the following weeks, life settled into a harmonious rhythm. Clara became increasingly involved in decisions about the household and the children, offering guidance, encouragement, and support without overstepping boundaries. Luke welcomed her insight, realizing that her perspective enriched their lives. They celebrated milestones together: the children's school achievements, birthdays, and small victories in ranch work, finding joy in the everyday moments that made life meaningful. One day, as they sat together on the porch, the children playing nearby, Clara reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the self-doubt that had followed her for so long, the belief that she was not worthy of love or belonging. Now, she realized that those fears had been slowly replaced by a quiet confidence, built through the trust and acceptance she had found with Luke and his children. She had discovered that love could be patient, steady, and expressed through care and presence rather than grand gestures. Luke, too, had grown in ways he had not anticipated. He had learned to trust, to share responsibilities, and to open his heart to someone new. He had learned that vulnerability did not mean weakness, but strength, and that allowing Clara into their lives had brought not just joy but stability and balance. He admired her resilience, her kindness, and her unwavering commitment to the children. In Clara, he had found a partner, not in the sense of romance alone, but in the sense of a shared life, a shared family, and a shared journey. The children, too, benefited from this growing sense of family. They learned lessons of empathy, patience, and love through Clara's example, understanding that family was not only about who lived under the same roof, but about trust, care, and mutual respect. They felt secure in the knowledge that Clara was always there for them, guiding, encouraging, and celebrating their individuality. Luke observed this transformation with pride, grateful for the balance and warmth Clara had brought into their home. Life on the ranch was not without its challenges, of course. There were days when chores piled up, when unexpected problems arose, and when fatigue threatened to overshadow joy. Yet, through every difficulty, Clara and Luke found strength in each other. They communicated openly, supported one another, and approached challenges together, reinforcing the trust and love that had grown steadily between them. Even the smallest acts, preparing a meal, helping with homework, repairing a fence, became expressions of care and commitment. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the fields, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, Clara and Luke shared a quiet moment of reflection. "I never thought I could feel this way," Clara said softly. "I always believed I wasn't good enough for anyone. But now being here with you and the children, it feels like I belong." Luke reached for her hand, holding it gently. "You do belong," he said. "You've been part of our lives for months, and I can't imagine this family without you. You've shown us what love really means." The children, overhearing parts of the conversation, ran over to them, their laughter filling the air. Clara and Luke smiled, letting the moment be simple and joyful. There was no need for grand declarations or dramatic gestures. The love and trust they shared had been proven every day, in small ways that mattered more than words ever could. Their connection was steady, real, and lasting, built on months of care, patience, and shared experiences. As time continued, the household thrived. Clara found joy in being a guiding presence in the children's lives, in helping Luke manage the ranch, and in simply being part of the small, meaningful family they had created. Luke found peace in trusting another adult, in seeing the children flourish under Clara's care, and in appreciating the quiet love that had grown between them. The children felt secure, loved, and supported, experiencing the benefits of a stable, nurturing environment that allowed them to grow with confidence. Eventually, Clara and Luke came to understand that their family was not defined by traditional expectations or societal norms, but by trust, care, and love in all its forms. They had created a household built on patience, mutual respect, and genuine connection, proving that love could be unconventional yet deeply meaningful. Clara had discovered her worth, Luke had learned to trust and open his heart, and the children had found a home filled with warmth and stability. In the quiet evenings on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the sky, Clara and Luke often reflected on their journey. The challenges they had faced, the doubts they had overcome, and the trust they had built formed the foundation of a life that was simple, yet profoundly satisfying. They had discovered that true happiness was not found in perfection or societal approval, but in the quiet moments of connection, care, and mutual respect that defined their everyday lives. The story concluded not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with the quiet, enduring presence of a family who had learned to love, trust, and accept one another fully. Clara, once insecure and doubtful of her worth, had found belonging and purpose. Luke, once guarded and reserved, had discovered the strength that came from vulnerability and shared life. And the children, who had grown and flourished under their guidance, had found security, happiness, and the joy of unconditional love. Together, they watched the sun dip below the horizon, feeling a sense of peace that came not from perfection, but from being together, supporting one another, and embracing the life they had built. Their bond was real, their love steady, and their family complete, not because it followed a traditional path, but because it had grown organically, nurtured by patience, care, and the quiet understanding that sometimes the simplest moments create the deepest connections. In the end, Clara, Luke, and the children had learned the most important lesson of all. Love is not about appearances, social expectations, or grand declarations. It is about presence, trust, and the willingness to care for each other in small, consistent ways. And in that truth, they had found a happiness that was real, lasting, and entirely their own.